This is the second video in my new series voted over on Patreon, which is Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, Misconceptions, where I take topics that are generally misunderstood or confuses people just a little bit, and I try to clear it up. Typically, I won't pick a topic unless at least 20 people have tried to correct me or others on various videos. And yes, I understand that I have a really bad sunburn. Just don't make eye contact with it. You'll be okay. So today's topic is going to be the original Seven Kingdoms, which seems to trip up quite a few people. So I could talk about the whole history of Westeros and its kingdoms and go on and on and on, but for this video I want to try to keep it as clear and concise as possible, which is very difficult for me and I probably will ramble anyways. In the future I would love to make an entire video, which would likely be over an hour long, about the history of Westeros and the rise and fall of certain kingdoms. But for this video I'm going to give you a very short, abbreviated version of the history of Westeros just to give you an idea of why the label of Seven Kingdoms came about. And if you don't want to hear about this backstory about it and you just want to hear about the original Seven Kingdoms, you can either click the box up here or you can go to the video description below where I have a timestamp that you can click and you can just jump ahead. So Westeros was originally inhabited by the giants and the children of the forest. The first men invaded Westeros by crossing the arm of Dorne. The children of the forest resisted, but the first men were able to keep pushing further and further into Westeros. 10,000 years ago, a pact was formed between the first men and the children of the forest, and the first men were given dominion over all the open lands. Following the signing, the Age of Heroes began, and this is where many noble houses trace their lineage to: Lan the Clever, Bran the Builder, Garth the Green Hand, and so on. And this is also when hundreds of kingdoms appeared as kings were fighting for territory, and there were hundreds of petty kings. However, most of the territories that we know that would become the Seven Kingdoms were mostly hammered out by the time the Andals invaded Westeros some 6,000 years ago, and they began to conquer and intermarry with the First Men. By the time of the Andal invasion, the Iron Islands were under one ruler. The Starks were finishing their conquest of the north. The Riverlands were a bit of a mess, but not yet controlled by the Ironborn, as they would be during Aegon's conquest. The Stormlands were under control, but constantly pushing up into the Riverlands. Dorne was still home to many kings, as the Martells had not yet taken control. The Lannisters were gradually acquiring more land in the Westerlands. The Reach was fairly formed and under the control of the Gardeners, and the Vale had many petty kings still, and was not yet under the control of the Arryns. When the Andals came 6,000 years ago, they shook things up a bit, and some of the territories and rulers began to change. Though again, I won't get into crazy detail about that. Okay, so the Andals come, and then slowly over time, the distinct regions that will be known as the Seven Kingdoms are formed. But what exactly are the Seven Kingdoms? Well, the Seven Kingdoms actually refers to the state Westeros was in shortly before Aegon the Conqueror invaded Westeros some 300 years before the beginning of the books. And of course, it refers to everything below the wall. Shortly before he invaded Westeros, the realm was in a more stable state and was hammered into about 7 distinct regions or kingdoms. And these kingdoms still fought each other and expanded their territory, held on to it, lost some of it, of course. But here are the 7 kingdoms that were around shortly before Aegon came and were there when Aegon came to conquer Westeros. The Kingdom of the North, ruled by the Starks. The Kingdom of the Rock, ruled by the Lannisters. The Kingdom of the Mountain and Vale, ruled by the Arryns. The Kingdom of the Isles and Rivers was ruled by House Hoare. And this is the one that usually trips people up. At the time of Aegon's landing and the term Seven Kingdoms being used, the Riverlands were under the control of the Ironborn for some time. So the territory of the Iron Islands and the Riverlands were actually considered one territory or kingdom. Aegon would be the one to force the Ironborn out of the Riverlands and therefore make the Riverlands its own territory. Shortly before Aegon's landing, there was also the Kingdom of the Stormlands, which was controlled by House Doradon. The Kingdom of the Reach was ruled by House Gardener. Finally, at this time, the Kingdom of Dorne was ruled by the Martells. Which is another thing I've received quite a few comments about. There have been a lot of people that have tried to tell me that since Dorne is ruled by princes and princesses, it is not considered one of the Seven Kingdoms, and that is absolutely incorrect. Dorne is considered one of the original 7 kingdoms. We see evidence for this all throughout the books, but the biggest confirmation of this is actually in the first book that lists them as one of the 7 kingdoms. And regardless of how we personally believe Dorne should be categorized, the Maesters, and honestly, George R. Martin has said Dorne was one of the original 7 kingdoms, regardless of them being ruled by princes or princesses. So even if we don't want to categorize it that way, we have to respect that the creator does. So those were the 7 kingdoms and how they were arranged before Aegon conquered Westeros, or Westeros below the wall. After Aegon conquered the 7 kingdoms, which was actually 6 kingdoms because he didn't conquer Dorne, one of his descendants would, but that cheeky bastard still put that in his title, King of the 7 Kingdoms. So after Aegon took over the 6 of 7 kingdoms, he actually rearranged their territories just a little bit. So instead of 7 distinct areas, we finally got 9. These 9 regions were the North, the Riverlands, which the Tullys were now in charge of after Aegon ridded them of the Ironborn, the Vale of Arryn, the Westerlands, the Iron Islands, the Crown Lands where the Targaryens ruled from, the Stormlands now under the control of House Baratheon, the Reach now under the control of House Tyrell, and Dorne still being bosses and under the control of the Martells and not part of Aegon's united Westeros. I know some try to say Dragonstone is its own region, but it's actually considered part of the Crown Lands. So simply put, the 7 kingdoms just refers to the state Westeros was in, 7 distinct kingdoms, before Aegon the Conqueror came to Westeros. And even though after his conquest the area became 9 distinct realms, it's still referred to as the 7 kingdoms. And if that bothers you, the A Song of Ice and Fire world has really weird titles and naming as it is, so you just gotta kinda go along with it. So thank you for watching another Misconceptions video. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and come back for more Game of Thrones videos, Star Wars videos, comic videos, and anything else sci-fi, fantasy, or horror related. In general, Maesters say 6 of the 7 because he didn't conquer Dorne, even though that cheeky bastard still put it in his title, King of the 7 Kingdoms, and I have to imagine Dorne was just like, really? Really? Screw you, Aegon.